Okay, guys. So before the break, we went through a revivification process, right? Who enjoyed that? Was it relatively easy, right? Not the most conversational thing in the world, though, was it? So, can I have a volunteer, please? Come on up. Give him a round of applause, folks. Sit yourselves down.
Selves plural.
Yourselves, yes. You have more than one.
Just waiting for the rest of me to get up there.
Well, it's the conscious part of you that can stay down there.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. So just face this a little bit. I'm just going to get this under your ear so that it just hooks in properly. There you go. It's just really nice.
Cool.
You can just put this behind your back if you want. That way you won't have to think about it too much.
Try not to think about much too much.
Well, not thinking is a good thing overall.
I practice
unless
that.
needed. Good. So what's your name again, sorry?
John.
John. Excellent. So I presume, John, that you, as a normal human being, do from time to time do things to relax, chill out, have fun, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, one or two.
One or two things?
I have a wide range of hobbies and activities.
Wide range is a good thing. If you were to narrow that wide range down to things that are particularly pleasant, what kind of things do you enjoy?
Scuba diving.
Scuba diving. You enjoy scuba diving?
Yeah.
What's it about scuba diving you enjoy?
The womb-like feeling of being in zero gravity is quite... I like...
Let me just go straight. When you go scuba diving, because I haven't actually scuba, I've been snorkeling.
Sure.
So you say when you're scuba diving.
It's one of the key aspects of it that I like is being weightless.
Being weightless.
Yeah.
Being weightless. And you said something charming, which is it's a womb-like
Very
sensation.
much so. Yeah, it can be. Yeah, absolutely.
Womb-like, but it's the weightlessness that you enjoy, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's one of the aspects. I like
One of the aspects.
I like
What is the other one?
seeing wrecked battleships.
Seeing, give me an example of one.
The best dive I ever did was the Thistlegorm in
The
Egypt.
Thistlegorm.
SS Thistlegorm in Egypt.
Thistlegorm, okay.
Went down during the Second World War and was only recently rediscovered.
Okay.
And it was a supply ship, so there's like
So
motorbikes down there.
just walk me through it. So there's a ship there, of course, but you haven't seen it yet because you're above water or something.
Mhm.
So how does it work? What happens?
Well, you'll go roll off the boat and
So
then
you roll off the boat,
drop down into the water.
right?
And
Is that the bit where you have that weightless feeling as soon as you roll off the boat?
Pretty much, yeah. As soon as you hit the water, well, you get down to the depth that you want to be at, and then
Right.
you
So-
stabilize your buoyancy.
Let me just understand this a second, because I haven't really been scuba diving. So you're on the boat,
Uh-huh.
right? And you roll off the boat.
Mhm.
You roll off the boat,
Yeah, and then you're into the blue.
and then you're into the blue.
Yeah.
You're into the blue.
Uh-huh.
That sounds like something really charming, being into the blue.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And at some point you descend, and you
Mhm.
say something about a buoyancy. I'm not quite sure what that means,
Yeah.
but more importantly, it sounds like that's the point at which you become weightless, is it?
That's right. Yeah. You want to be neutrally buoyant.
Neutrally buoyant.
Yeah.
That's when you get weightless.
That's weightless.
Is that when you feel like you're in this womb-like
Mhm.
thing?
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Womb-like thing. So you roll off the boat,
Mhm.
you're into the big blue.
Yeah.
Then suddenly you're weightless, you're in this womb-like thing.
Mhm.
And that's when you go exploring, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, I'm trying to stay conscious here for the moment.
So notice what there's a conflict here. Can you see that happening? Every time I'm describing it and get more hypnotic, he's trying to stay conversational, but
I'd like to go into.
you'd like to go into that, right? Now, this is the important thing. Inside of a regular conversation, you don't have I can't just say, now go into a trance and do that, because specifically, it'll break the social contract and he'll know something's going on, right? So if I'm going to semi-covert and I can happily switch tracks. We like to have a very simple way. Well, there's two variations of this. I'll give you a simple way to actually allow him to do that without actually seeming to do anything overtly hypnotic. Would you like to see that? Yeah. It's very easy. So you're rolling off the boat. You're into the big blue. You have that neutral state, kind of like in the womb. I could just close your eyes for a moment if you could. I know it's unusual, but really think about that. The big blue, the weightless, womb-like thing, the exploration, and there's a battleship somewhere over there. Now, if I was going to go into regular hypnosis, I can do something simple as, and I'd like you to really enjoy that battleship whilst I'll talk to the other you. You get how we get into more of a conscious association. Not very covert at this point, though, is it? right? The idea of him closing his eyes and thinking about that, that's something different. That can be more covert, because just really think about that. It's a really pleasant experience. When you've really been in touch with that for a while, come on back so we can talk about that. There was something, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There really was something, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see he's still in there, in that glow of trance? Now notice how, if I didn't put that overtly, I'm going to talk to you elsewhere and so on thing in, this could be part of a normal conversation, just a very interesting one, right? I've done this in a coaching context, and it works very, very nicely there. Even over the phone, just close your eyes for a minute and really think about what you just said, right? But then, who's to say that you can't use this without him actually going to full-blown trance? The interesting thing I find, John, in terms of the big blue, it's a little bit like, have you heard of this thing called conversational hypnosis?
It's crossed my radar.
It's crossed your way every now and again. I don't know if you realize this, but every time you have a chance to talk with someone, it's almost like when you make eye contact with them for long enough, a sense of the big blue, that same sense of weightlessness and being in the womb, that's part of what that interaction starts feeling like. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now just imagine for a moment that you're talking to someone who really you need to influence in an important way. You want to be a force for good in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else you've done hasn't worked for whatever reason. And all you have to do is just stop and recall that big blue long enough for both of you to be weightless in terms of this heavy issue that I had. So that they're safe, like that womb-line feeling. And suddenly all the constraints you had before start dissolving, don't they?
They could.
Because all really is just you and another human being being human beings. You get past all that, bullshit, all the stuff that normally keeps people stuck somewhere that they don't want to be. And to the extent that you can help them find their own big blue, their own weightlessness, wouldn't you be a great force for good in their life? Wouldn't that be something?
I like the idea. Yeah.
Isn't that a good idea? Do I sense any hesitation in the background there?
No.
Or is it just a question of this is just something you
No,
like the idea of?
yeah, I'm good with that.
You good with that?
Yeah.
So for $5.99, you could sign up for the program.
I think
You get the idea.
I think I did.
You already did you?
Yeah, I bought the ticket and I'm taking the ride. Yeah.
Good. Is the big blue ride?
Yeah, it's got God beams coming out through the water.
Love it. So you notice how this is almost a very gentle conversation, right? If you hadn't had any idea of hypnosis or conversation hypnosis, something like that, would this have sounded any way unusual? It would just sound like an intimate conversation between friends, wouldn't it? That's the point. If you try and get them to this, it's no longer conversational hypnosis. Yes, there's some cheats like the close your eyes and think about it, but notice, he's still sitting there. You're still in the big blue, aren't you?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
And notice how once you got there, you can really talk about anything in a very sort of open and honest way. You can be a real force for good. And you can do almost anything. I'll give an example. You won't have to do this. It's just as an example. Are there any kind of situation in your life that you would want to be a better version of yourself because you get stuck somehow? Don't choose something big, something minor you're happy to talk to strangers about,
Well, do you know, I've been doing this a little while with you now,
Yeah.
And I've kind of addressed a lot of the things like smoking and stuff like that.
All right.
I'm pretty unstressed as an individual.
You're unstressed as an individual.
So
You're done.
Nothing really springs. Oh, I've probably got major traumas, but nothing really, springs
Nothing
to
really
mind.
could spring to mind. Well, in which
I'm
case,
sorry, I'm not
I won't show him that part.
Ask me again.
But there's a. I'll give you a problem. No.
No, I'm good.
There's actually a better version of this that you haven't even considered yet. You realize that? Because there's a bunch of things in your life that I bet you wish you could be much better at.
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
Well, I'd like to be a better hypnotist.
A better hypnotist. Yeah. So when you think about how good a hypnotist you think you are already at this point, right? How is that?
Sorry?
How is that? What is that like, being that hypnotist you think you are?
I I'm not sure I understand the question properly.
Well, you clearly have an idea of being what a better hypnotist means, right?
Right, yeah.
What is that you're not already?
Earning.
Oh, it's about money. It's about income, is it?
I haven't made the switch from, basically, I'll get up in the morning, I'll do I do some online work, and I make a living. But
Sure.
when I get back I'm going to Thailand next week, do a bit of diving, and when I get back, I'm going to apply all the techniques from the hypnotherapy business course,
Excellent.
which I've invested in. But that's going to mean actually clearing my desk of everything else and not just going back into the same old patterns.
Just think about this for a moment. You've come back from Thailand, you've done your dive trip, and you've had a great time and so on. And obviously, you just come back from this whole big blue experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you had some interesting dives already sorted out, but whatever it is, you'll have the weightlessness. You may even have it in time with the sunshine, those God beams that come down, and it's a pleasant experience to take back with you. So when you think about being at home or in your office, wherever you do your work, and there's all the old ways of doing things, but then there's this idea of your own business method, right? Running your own business of hypnotherapy, making some money doing those things. And however you feel about that right now, just consider that by the time you've done certain things, you'll have that same kind of big blue experience, that weightlessness as a hypnotherapist
Yeah, I can see
that you were having, as a diver as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Unconscious competency.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that something you would like?
Yes, very much so.
So when you're at home and you're thinking about, even think about right now, all the things you would need to do to even just begin your business, the business side of things, right? It's going to sound a little strange, but just think of it this way. Imagine that you had these God beams coming down on you just as you started doing things, little things like picking up the phone to talk to someone about doing a lecture demo, for example, or booking in a client, or even organizing an office space, something like that. You get the idea of what I mean? So when you think of it like that, what happens?
I'm pretty weightless at the moment. So.
You're pretty weightless, right? So I want you to do me a favor for a moment, because this is important to you, right, to start your own hypnotherapy business? Yeah?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you just to close your eyes for a moment. I know you can recall the big blue easily and the weightlessness of that and the God beams that really make it a magnificent experience. What I'm curious about is all the little tasks you will have to engage in to just start your hypnotherapy business. And I know the emotions that you have right now, I wonder if they'll attach to those automatically. You know what I mean? Just really think about that for a bit. Because when you think about it, it's only natural to attach all those wonderful feelings to the work of beginning a hypnotherapy practice, because this is something you really want to do, isn't it? So why wouldn't you feel the same kind of weightlessness, the same kind of protection or safety of being in a womb? That same splendor of the God beams. And even have a sense that what you're doing is as important as the mystery of the big blue. You know what I mean? So why on earth wouldn't you feel this way when you're beginning a business? Surely that's the most natural way of starting, isn't it? Because then you can look forward to the future and think about all the people you've helped, all the skills you've built, the income you've generated whilst doing that. And doesn't that make the feelings you had even more profound? Right? Take your time to really consider that now. Some important things going on. Above all else, somehow you learned to really love scuba diving. You learned there are moments in it, like the big blue and the weightlessness and the God beams and the shipwrecks that you can explore, that were just very rewarding to you. Very rewarding for you. Now wonder what the equivalence will be in your business that'll be equal or even more rewarding for you than the big blue, the weightlessness, the God beams, and the exploration you make. Thing is, you and I don't know. How can we know? Until you start doing it to find out. You know what I mean? Seems you're doing quite a bit of thinking there. It's important to do that. I'll happily wait here patiently. When you finish your thinking, just go ahead and open your eyes and talk to me again. Seems like you did some thinking there.
I was doing some thinking and some linking.
Thinking and linking.
I'm linking up some ideas there.
Wow. Wow, that's good.
I was away with the fairies. Don't mind me, guys.
Yeah?
You carry on.
So notice we went a little bit off script there, and technically there's a little bit of therapy, I guess you could call it. But that's not the important point. You notice how very quickly, by revivifying something pleasant, the scuba diving, he was there in that glow anyways, and then attaching that to something else is very easy. Right? In this case, it's starting a business. How do you feel about that, by the way?
It's something I've done before, so I know I can do it. But the whole, as I was saying, it's the idea of being unconsciously competent, which is I'm attaching that idea of unconscious competency in my diving, which took a while from to the point where it's just
You glad you did it?
It's something, as you're saying, hypnosis is something you are. A diver is now something I am. I went through the process of learning it, and then I became it. And
you had to go through some effort for that, right?
Yeah, it wasn't arduous. It was a pleasure,
but it was work.
But it was a process.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I guess, is that what you're saying about your business? You have to do some work in?
That's exactly what I'm saying about my business.
Really?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Wow, that'll be an interesting journey, it sounds like.
I'll see you in a couple of months, yeah?
I look forward to it. All right, guys, give him a nice round of applause. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So you can turn this one off now if you want. I'm not interested in you doing anything like this. I just want to show you some of what that's possible with it. Notice how we went from something very conversational to something that's not necessarily appropriate in a pub, but again, I've had people close their eyes in the pub and think about stuff too, right? You just catch the moment, and importantly, you give them an opportunity to do what they want to do in a social context. In this case, he wanted to just drift off and get into his ideas, so give him permission to do that. It seems like something you had an important thought. Why don't you think it through fully? You know what? Just close your eyes and think about it. I don't care. I'll just do something else. Right? And then suddenly, he's got the permission to do exactly what, the conditions have already set him up to do. So he wants to have a go at something like that, but a lot easier, a lot simpler. Yeah? Just the two of you? Should we have a break for the rest of you, and then just two of you will come up for something? Sure, can we have a mic here, please? Just stand up.
When you were working with him, at that moment when you were talking to him about the big blue, I had this epiphany that you could use this on yourself.
Well, yes,
the conversation. I mean, I'm not being silly. You could use, the power of self-hypnosis, which I did.
Sure.
But this, to me, since you're always talking to yourself constantly, you could adapt it.
It depends on who you are, but yes.
Well, maybe no one else in here is. I'm always talking to myself. And I just suddenly realized I could talk to myself like that.
Oh, for sure. Hey, one of my personal insomnia cures, the ones I use on myself, I'll imagine I'm my own client, and I'll just talk myself into a trance, and before I know it, I give up because it's just too comfortable, and I fall asleep. It's like I'm like this gentleman over here. It's like, after a while I just lose the plot and I just don't know what I'm doing. Great, perfect resource. You'll never have insomnia again in your life. Right? Over here, very quickly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that although it wasn't done to me today, when you echo key phrases, I've had that done to me before, in other places. Mm-hmm. And at some stage, if they overdo it, my conscious mind just says, they're repeating everything I'm saying. Yeah. And that's it. It's dead and buried from then on.
Sure.
And it can be overdone.
For sure it can. Everything can be overdone,
Yeah.
right? What they've done is they've broken the social context. They've become basically clumsy with it.
Yes.
The point is you do what's necessary and no more. Here, I'm happy for you to overdo it, because it's better to overdo it in here than underdo it. And in time, you can scale it back to fit the social situation, or you just do just enough to get what you want, just enough what you need, right?
Yeah. Okay. I just thought I'd make the point that it can be overdone and throw people out.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Okay.
And again, it goes right back to the idea of hypnosis is anything but a casual relationship.
Yeah.
You can overdo putting people in trance. Let me give you an example of this. Milton Erickson, who hopefully you guys, who doesn't know who Milton Erickson was? Milton Erickson, Dr. Milton Erickson. Dr. Milton Erickson was a psychiatrist in America and an absolute genius of hypnosis. He really did things for hypnosis that I think were phenomenal. Most of the stuff we've been doing here is based on his work as a hypnotherapist, and his genius goes way, way beyond anything we've been doing here or even I'm capable of. Here's the thing, though. Erickson was a bit of a practical joker, and he loved hypnosis as well. So he did the famous Erickson handshake induction, right? So by shaking his hand, 3 hours later, you come to thinking, what just happened? Where am I, right? He was famous for it. The problem is he did it a little bit too often, to the point where all his colleagues, after a while, refused to shake Erickson's hand because they had no idea when they'll be coming to again. And so, as a result, people admired him, respected him, loved him, but were a little bit afraid of him. And apart from handshaking, it means outside of his family and aside from his teaching students who came to his house, he didn't have a huge amount of friends, in terms of friends rather than his friends, right? It's a price that he paid for that. And it's not a judgment call, by the way, because I think the man was tremendous and did phenomenal things, but there is a price that he paid. He might have been happy to, which case is fine, but anything that you do will have a price. Sometimes it's a price you're happy to pay, sometimes it isn't. So just think ahead in terms of, would you want this happening to you? And if you don't, why would you do it to someone else, right? So let's do an exercise now. Inside your groups, I'd like you to find a partner you haven't worked with yet. So very quickly do that and then face this way again. Okay, we're going to do this in nice, simple steps, all right? So it's going to be very short steps, but it'll be easier for you to do. We'll come backwards and forwards, all right? So the first one's going to take literally a few seconds. We're going to take too long. All I want you to do is introduce the topic. Have a little chit-chat. One person in your pairs, please put your hand up right now. You'll be leading the interaction. You're going to be the hypnotist, right? All I want you to do is kind of like we saw me doing here, is introduce to the idea, the general topic of a trance theme in a socially non-awkward way. In other words, hey, everyone likes to relax. What do you like to relax? What do you do for fun? What do you do to, is there anything you do in your life that makes you feel peaceful, right? Here's what not to do. So what do you do to relax? What makes you feel peaceful? You see the pressure he's under? It's like, I don't know. You do feel peaceful, but what is it then? The pressure is the wrong kind of pressure, right? You want a kind of a casual, relaxed pressure. And you can, if you were paying attention, do you notice any yes that's happening at the beginning, right? Everyone likes to relax, right? I like to relax. I'll do kinds of things. I'm sure you're the kind of person who's got at least a few things you like to do. Relax, feel at ease, that sort of stuff, right? Like what? And you see, then he'll give me a topic, and that'll be my opening gambit, shall we say. I'll know what kind of territory I'm in. You don't have to do it exactly this way, but I do want it to be more conversational than the direct FBI interviewers. When do you relax, boy? Right? Which is the tendency that most people have when jumping into an exercise of this nature. Do you understand what I mean? So keep it in the context of a normal chit-chat sort of thing, but within the next 10, 20 seconds or so, find out one context, one a hobby or an activity or something like that, which has for him the experiences of a trance theme. Here we had scuba diving, which I always immediately knew, because I've worked with scuba divers before, that there will be some kind of peacefulness, some kind of relaxation, some kind of spaced outness, some kind of mindset and so on with that. As soon as you have a topic like that, pause, let them ask you the same questions, we'll come back and we'll do the second step. Make sense? So it's only going to be about 10, 15 seconds apiece, and then switch over and go the other way and we'll come back. Off you go. So did you all have a chance to get a topic or theme that the other person's engaged in, yes? I suspect some of you went a little bit deeper than that, but that's fine. We're going to do the exact same conversation again in a moment, and so you might get a different nuance out of it. So you're going to introduce the topic, so what do you like to do? I'll relax. Well, I don't know, I like riding my bike. Maybe, maybe not. We'll find out a little bit more about it. What else do you like to do? Oh, I love reading, right? Reading versus riding a bike, which one's going to be more hypnotic? You don't know is the answer. Reading is if you're going to put money on something, reading might be a little bit more because it's more engaging, not engaging, it's less activity involved. But I know people who are runners, for example, who go into this huge trance when they're running. That's a phenomenal resource, right? So it doesn't really matter too much. We just want to explore a little bit around that. What you want to find out is basically, you want to explore the underlying value to that experience to them. It's obviously important to them. How come? Why is it important? What is it about that experience that's important, right? So we had here scuba diving. And you may have, I can't remember exactly how I phrased it or exactly what I asked. So you like scuba diving, right? Yeah. Like scuba diving. What is it about that you enjoy so much? Or how come? Or what does you like? What's the big deal about it? How does it make you feel? You notice that these are all different versions of the same essential question. I'm trying to figure out, there's an experience that's obviously valuable to them. Well, what's the value in it for them? If they go, it's not a big deal, well then maybe it isn't really a big deal. You just explore a little bit around it and then find out, well, if that isn't one, then maybe there's something else they do, it's going to be a bigger deal. You get the idea? So find the underlying value. I'd like to begin again with the same conversation. So once you find a topic, you can start echoing it back. That's the beginning of the revivification. So, would you like to relax? Oh, I'll do all kinds of things. I have lots of hobbies. Oh, great, you have lots of hobbies. You have lots of hobbies, yeah? Great. Like what, for example? Scuba diving. Oh, you like scuba diving, do you? Notice I'm going straight into the whole echoing thing. So what is it about scuba diving that you enjoy so much? What is it about scuba diving that's so special? So notice by the time I've asked that question, I have used that little personal trance word, scuba diving, enough times that the experience has started to revivify already, so you can give me a better quality of answer, right? As opposed to this version. Do you want to see the harsh version? What would you like to do? Come on, what would you like to do? Quickly, what is it?
Lots of things.
Like, just give me a quick example. Come on, don't mess around, right? So he's already under pressure here, right? Let's say he comes up with something. Just say anything. It doesn't matter at this point.
Drumming.
Drumming, great. By the way, are you a drummer?
Yes.
See? I've just taken the pressure off him, and notice how he came up with something more quickly. Now, I don't want to bring anything too much about it. So what's so special about drumming? Notice how I had to search a little bit more. Now, what if I start to make his life easier? So it's drumming you like, is that right? So you're a drummer?
Yes.
You've been a drummer for a while?
Yes.
Oh, great. So what is it about drumming you like so much?
You go into a different world.
And do you notice that there's less tension when he's starting to answer that now? And did my questions sound somehow awkward or overdoing it in any way? No. I'm just double checking. So you like drumming, right? Yes. Are you a drummer? Yes. Have you drummed for a long time? I don't care if he says yes or no. If he says no, what am I going to say? Oh, so you haven't drummed for a while. No, that's right. That's right. Do you see what I mean? I'm just hijacking his no. So if you haven't been drumming for a long time, how come it's so special to you? Same question. You can see the yes said built into it, yes? You get the idea now? So start again from scratch, introduce the topic again, and then start exploring the underlying value, and listen out for those personal trance themes, those personal trance words, like here was the big blue, the weightlessness, the womb feeling, and the God beams, right? And in fact, the whole hand motions was part of that too. Can we have a microphone over here, please, someone?
Do we have to continue the topic we started before, or new one?
It's easier, but don't continue it. Start again, and partners, be nice to them and just reintroduce the same topic again. I just want to get used to having the conversation all over again, right? Okay, guys, off you go. Okay, how'd that go? Was that fun? Yeah. Who's starting to get like animated by the conversations, like, ooh, this is getting interesting, yeah? So have you started hearing them coming up with certain words or phrases that seem special to them? We'll call these personal trance words. Of course, up here you heard them as being things like the big blue, weightlessness, like a womb-like feeling, the God beams. These were things that seemed particularly important to him. Is that correct? So what I want you to do next is go through the first 2 stages again, but very briefly. So it's just good to get used to that sort of process. So again, do you like to relax? Yeah, what kind of things do you like to do? Well, I like to drum. Great. So you're a drummer, right? Remember we had those little mini reification side. You're a drummer, right? You drummed for a long time, right? Yeah. And do you enjoy drumming? Yes. So what's so special? And then they'll go, well, it makes me feel alive and I get in the zone and whatever, right? So alive, in the zone will be personal trance words. What I want you to do next, this is the fun part, is just summarize everything they've told you so far. So let me get this straight. There's lots of hobbies that you have, right? Yes. And in particular, one of them you really enjoy is scuba diving, right? Yes. So you're a scuba diver, yes. And you scuba dive for some time in different places, correct? Yes. Now, in one particular occasion, you were on the boat and you rolled off the boat, is that right? Yes. So you rolled off the boat, right? Yes. And you descended to a certain place and then you became weightless, right? Yes. Became weightless, right? Yes. And I don't know if you had the God beams, but there was that big blue, yes. You see where we're going with this? All you're doing is summarizing the experience for them hypnotically. In other words, you switch your own mindset. You go first in whatever way you wish to, and you summarize their experience for them, and then just watch what happens. Is that easy to do? Yes? Well, then show me. Off you go. How'd I go, folks? Was that good? Who enjoyed it? So stand on up. Go on.
Yeah, hi. You were doing
Very right now.
Thank you. We were doing a trance with him, and I kind of put him into a trance and just made him get a vivid picture of his relaxation, his meditation and all.
Mm-hmm.
He likes meditating. And I try and anchor it to go in there whenever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually went very deep into it.
Excellent.
Everything changed about him.
Excellent. Yeah, I can round of applause for that.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I mean, I'm a little bit speechless at the moment because up until now I haven't really gone into a really, really deep trance. And I was quite blown away. It was his idea, Besvik, to say, right, let's try and anchor that feeling of relaxation when I do meditation. And I just went there and yeah, awesome work. So thank you.
It's fantastic. You've actually gone to the next step, which is excellent. So I'll show you how to do that conversationally as well in a minute. What else? What else you guys notice? Anything else? Just stand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I found when I was working with Carson here, he was talking about drumming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a drummer. I'm a musician, but not a drummer. But I actually got a sense of what it was to be a drummer. I could actually feel when this guy described to me.
Yep.
I felt like I had a drum kit.
In order to do a breathification properly, you have to go first. This is technically known in hypnotic circles as a deep trance identification. Right. And it is one of the quickest ways to learn anything, especially a skill. So if you ever come across a real master hypnotist whose work kind of you like, and please, if you choose me for this one, don't come at me at once because I'm going to get really screwed over this one otherwise. Do a reification. So how come you're a hypnotist? Well, because of this. What is it about hypnosis you really like? Oh, I really enjoy this. How do you know, when this situation happens, what do you do? Oh, well, I remember there's one person, and off they go. And as you can ride their trance with them, you will learn a lot about how they do their work. That's one of the ways that I used to work with other hypnotists. I don't know here got the Hypnosis with the Hypnosis Masters interview series. Want to listen to those? That's one of the ways we got those interviews done, right? I just revivified the best part of their work, and as a result, we all learned something together, right? So it's kind of a little mini revivification on those interviews. So you learn more, and importantly, if you get to experience it right along with them, your unconscious mind is kind of getting formatted for being good at that sort of thing as well. You get the idea?
So, Igor, what is it you like about
Yeah, exactly. I knew that was coming. Over here, Jakob, you just walked past this lovely young lady there. Again, twice.
Hi, we had a really interesting experience that while Barry was being the hypnotist, he hypnotized himself.
Again.
But the
eh?
amazing thing was that I learned more from it than I think I've learned in the last 2 days.
That's great.
Because I was watching somebody hypnotizing themselves. And
He's
I could
talking himself
see-
in, right?
Seriously.
Yeah.
You know, kind of, I'm laughing about it, but I mean, it was a real experience for me
Yeah.
to see his facial expression change. Because I was looking at it, it was like looking at something in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't being the hypnotist
Yeah.
trying to find something.
Exactly.
I was totally relaxed because I was the subject, but I was watching this happening. It was absolutely surreal and fantastic.
What you discovered, Fiona, is the ultimate H+. No effort.
No effort. That's it.
You
That's
just watch-
exactly it.
And that's exactly how H+
Yeah.
feels. It is no effort.
yeah.
You just watch them do stuff.
Exactly.
And if this stuff's taking them away from trance, you switch to a different approach.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll find one little doorway where they'll go, and you go, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Let's
and
stick
this-
around here.
Absolutely. It's just because Barry said to me, listen, I'm really sorry, you know, kind of like, I'm getting more out of this than you are. And I said, no, you've no idea what you've just given me. You know, it was a great
Great.
gift. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So over here first, and then if you stand up, we'll get it to you next. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Barry can be the world's first, or the world's fastest, self-hypnotizing hypnotist. Watch this. All of you sleep. Go ahead, Jakob.
I was exploring with Gloria. One of my hobbies. It's I love read comic books.
Yeah.
And we are. She was checking the feelings I've got, and I said something like, "I like to imagine that I have the power to help people," and then it pop out. Oh, that's why I'm hypnotherapist.
Yeah. Now, what Jakob just did again is very similar. Do you notice the pattern between what Jakob just did spontaneously and what these two gentlemen over here did earlier on with the meditation? Is there a pattern beginning to develop here? I'm very glad you guys are getting it before we go down that road, because that's what number 5 is about. But we have another question before we go down that way. Do you want to stand up, Karen?
Yeah, I just experienced something rather strange here with Donald. One of his activities that he likes is swimming. Now, swimming is not an activity that I like, and I'm quite got a bit of a phobia about swimming. But it was quite interesting when he was talking about swimming, and he was telling me, I asked him if he had a better experience than at the swimming bath. So he was telling me about swimming in Cape Town, and he was describing how it felt. And I actually found myself having a nice experience about swimming and actually going along with it, and almost like this guy over there, almost being hypnotized at the same time. So
Absolutely.
it was quite an experience.
It
So
goes
maybe
back
I
to
might
what we
go
talked
swimming.
about. It goes back to what we talked about before. First of all, in hypnotherapy, if you're doing your job well, you should be getting as much therapy out of the process as your clients do. Secondly, just as Alan discovered over here, what you just did there was called a deep trance identification. You are basically surfing on the back of their experience. And that's how most real deep learning takes place. Which is why, if you try and learn a skill from someone who is relatively incompetent at it, all the information in the world will be no good. You can get that from a textbook. What you need is someone who's actually good enough at it so you can ride on the coattails of their skillful trance. In this case, the skill is enjoying swimming, a skill that you haven't developed yet, right? But now that you have a pattern in there, are you going to be instantly the world's best swimmer and the happiest swimmer? No, of course not. But the potential has just been placed inside your mind as a seed. Just like the potential of being a great drummer is in Alan's mind as a seed. And the more he does this, have you ever wondered why when musicians hang out with good musicians become better? Or painters hang out with good painters, they get better? It's partly because they challenge their skill, but it's partly just because hanging out with other people who are great plants other seeds inside your mind, and the bits they're good at suddenly become bits you're good at in your own way, and that comes up with a new dynamic, which they then look at and go, oh, I can learn from that, and that's how we learn from each other. Do you get the idea? So congratulations, Karen. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it was quite interesting for me because I had this feeling that Karen was really having to work hard. And then I thought, well, you know, we've got a commitment to be great hypnotherapists and great subjects. So then I went into those exercises we did this morning about being really connected in friendship and also really feeling the emotion. And so that was probably part of it.
Absolutely. Now you understand how you can actually, do you know a little secret about this exercise? We haven't finished the whole version of it yet. We'd like to know a little secret about how this works conversationally. If it's just you, then we can have a break. And I'm easy as far as I'm concerned. Here's a little secret. This is, I'm not sure this has a technical name for it, but let's call it a pre-vivification. This is how you can create an experience that's never existed before. In the revivification, you were asking them questions about their experience in such a way they came back to life again, correct? In a pre-vivification, you describe your own experience as though they were revivifying it for you, and provided you keep them engaged enough in a hypnotic context through maybe yes sets and other things like that, you're going to basically create a deep trance identification in them merely by recounting your own experience. But you have to have an open mind for that, in other words, a receptive mind, which means all your trance-building context, you don't launch into it with this. This is something you do at the end of a context. So remember, yesterday we spent a lot of time doing yes sets and piggybacking and so on, correct? We'll come back to yes sets in due course. So what if you spend all that time doing your yes sets and your power words and your trance themes and all the rest of it to build a nice little context, and then you say, oh, by the way, I was on holiday recently, and I've got to let you know, I was swimming in Cape Town. Actually swimming in Cape Town. It was the most wonderful experience, because there's the water. And all you're doing now is you're creating a brand new experience they never had before. But as long as you've gone first properly, in other words, the positive emotion, all the rest of it comes with it, you'll get pulled into it. Now, this happened to me. It has ruined my life in some ways. Not really. This happens to us all the time. Why do we get inspired to certain professions or to do certain things, right? So I remember when I was growing up, there was a TV show here in the UK, it's actually an American show. It's called LA Law. I don't know if you guys remember it, way back in the 80s. I loved that show. What did I become? A lawyer. Being a lawyer is nothing like the show. That's why I'm not a lawyer anymore. But that was a pre-vivification for me. They created an experience that was so appealing to me that I decided to do it. There's a dark side to this as well. There is a famous German book called Die Leiden des jungen Wärters, the Jungen Wärters, which is roughly translated as The Suffering of Young Wärter, which basically is about a depressed young man who commits suicide. Great book. Actually, it is a great book. And the problem with this great book is it described his suicide in such beautiful terms that there was a spate of copycat suicides all across Europe. They actually had to ban the book to prevent people killing themselves.
Still, all the German students have to read it.
Still, the German students have to read it just because, especially the professor doesn't like them. Read this, you'll enjoy it. Yeah. And that question you had, ask me about a month's time from now, okay? Yeah. It's a very powerful book, and unless you put some hypnotic filters in place to filter out certain parts of the message, it can have a negative impact as well. As hypnotists, you understand why. Because that book pre-vivified the experience of suicide in a way that was so appealing, people started doing it. Not a healthy thing, by the way, just in case you were wondering. Now, just imagine if you took the unhealthy context of that out and replaced it with something like, I don't know, crazy, like drinking water. Do you begin to have a sense of the value of the tool that you have here, folks? It is very, very powerful. You only had a few minutes of this experience, and already you notice as hypnotists, you're being sucked into their trance and experiencing that as well. And now taking the same skill the other way around and introducing it to other people, can you see yourself being very influential this way? Yes? But we're not there at that point yet. We still want to finish off the actual full-blown conversational version of revivification. What I'd like to do with this now is, rather than going through the whole 4 steps again, which is introduce the topic, exploring the value, collecting the personal transfers, and so on, I'd like you to jump straight to step 4. And this is a very useful skill to have. If you get interrupted in a process, all you need to do is summarize hypnotically all the events that happened up until the point of your interruption, and you will usually have the revivification right there within seconds again, right? Hypnotherapists is particularly useful if you have to break with your clients, or if you finish one session and the next week they come back in again. A really nice way of reinducing trance at that point, rather than just starting a whole brand new trance induction, is to say, well, last week where we left off was this, and you just list it out hypnotically. And the key here is, this is one of the reasons we introduced the revivification now, and not at the start of our work. You could have done it equally at the start, but you would not have understood the value of the mindset, the hypnotic qualities to the revivification. It is not just a shopping list. You understand that, right? So turn to your partners. If we had, before we do that, can we have John back up here a second? I might as well just show it to you. It's the easiest one. Give him a round of applause, folks. Have a seat up here. Luckily, John will have to do no talking in this one. Hey, John, how's it going? Good. So last time you were sitting in this chair, you had an experience, didn't you? In that experience, we were talking about your scuba diving. I know you enjoy your scuba diving. You're a scuba diver yourself, and you've scuba dived in different locations. Now, if I understand you correctly, when we had that chat, you talked about how what you really enjoyed when you roll off the back of the boat and you hit the big blue. There comes a point when you have that weightless feeling. You feel like you're floating in the womb or something like that. Sometimes you even have the pleasure of the God rays that really create a spectacular scene. And then you get to explore something, right? So just close your eyes for a moment and think about that. Are we there? The only reason I've asked him to close his eyes is so I can talk to you guys without interrupting that too much for him. Do you see how quickly he went there? I don't need you to do the closing eyes part. I just want you to do something else in a moment's time. I'm not going to do it as a demo right now, because I'd rather you just work the process out for yourself, and then we can demonstrate it afterwards if you really want me to do that. So whenever you're ready, just come on back. Was that good? Were you there? Can you see his refocusing going on? Could I have a mic up here very quickly? Anyone? Mike? Or Charlie? Or Jakob? Anyone with a mic? Just, you'll have to race each other. Jakob, of course, is going to lose this one because that's what racing looks like, Jakob. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Yay! Gold seal. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, you anchored those words so effectively that while you've been talking for the last half an hour to everybody else, I've been sitting there just going, donk, donk, donk. Even in the middle of a conversation with Rita while we're talking, I overheard you mention it. Go, oh, donk. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. Okay, you can go now. Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause. So you notice how this hypnotic summary, thank you. This hypnotic summary is a revivification all by itself. As long as you keep a hold of these personal trance words, this is why we call them personal trance words. Do you get the idea? And so as long as you summarize it like that, well, the same, in fact, you saw pretty much the impact straight out, right? So it didn't take very long. The same way, I don't want you to take very long with a person. Just summarize everything that's happened hypnotically. When they are there, I want you to use this. You have a choice on how to use it. Let's go with this. This is the antidote to PMS, or if we call that it here. It's called the positive mental attitude. You all know that, right? So I want you to basically create a link between them experiencing a positive mental attitude and, on a day-to-day basis, and whatever the experience was. In this case, it's scuba diving or drumming or whatever it is, right? So this is the magic formula. The words themselves, as you understand, is not the most important thing. It's the concept. You summarize all this. Now, I'd like to talk to you about having a positive mental attitude in your day-to-day life. Would it be having a more positive attitude to life be useful for people overall, for you guys? Yes? Of course. And then basically, knowing all the stuff you know about the hypnotic summary, you remind them of that. They're there. That's your induction. And you say, look, having a positive mental attitude in day-to-day life is just like scuba diving, just like drumming, because, and now you have to justify it with something that is plausible enough not to trigger the critical factor. You know all about this now from yesterday, right? Plausible enough not to trigger the critical factor, and allows you to weave in the personal trance word constantly in the context of talking of a positive mental attitude. I'll happily demonstrate this to you after you've done the exercise, but I want you to give yourself a round of that first. Do you get the idea here? Any questions on that? So let's give you 3 minutes apiece. You're already on 4 minutes. Let's go with 3 minutes. I think the challenge will be useful. 3 minutes, of which the first 20 seconds at best is the induction, and after that you can just go rifting around a positive mental attitude, their personal trance themes, and how they relate to each other. You get the idea? Off you go. All right, guys, so how was that? Was that fun? What happened? Tell me. Stand up and we'll get a mic to you.
It's interesting because I think Alan and I had the same experience that we were listening to the other person, and we could, at least I could see him speak to me, and I tried to grasp the meaning or grasp the words he was saying, but I couldn't really understand anything. I only felt the feeling of what he was suggesting, and then he attached it to a positive mental attitude. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the feeling I have when I have a positive mental attitude. That was all that was left. And
perfect.
Very
and
well done.
How much more? Yeah, give him a round of applause for that. That's a great job. And think about it. How much more motivating is it to actually engage in a positive mental attitude when you have, essentially, as we've done here, hijacked something they're already highly motivated to do and engage in to something new? Do you see how that works? You now have something which is invaluable in any form of influence. You like to know what that's called? Leverage. Right? So congratulations, well done. Anyone else wants to talk a little bit about that experience? We have a few people still in it. All right. So any other comments or things like that? Go ahead.
It was very funny. I was telling her something about I play the violin, and she was. We were talking about the music, and then she was, trying to say me yes about the music and bringing the words, but then she was coming in her own world instead of that I was coming there, because she was drifting away and trying to imagine something, but not totally was that, but a little bit. But it's too much to tell her at that moment in a few words. So she was every time drifting more away in her own words, in her own world. Not I, but more she was.
So when she was the hypnotist, she was drifting off in her own world. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, Barry's the expert of this one, apparently. But in terms of being influential, you want to be firmly planted in their world rather than your own. You may be very comfortable in your own world, which is great. If you want to be the master of self-hypnosis, that's definitely one of the ways to do it. Yeah, you'll love the advanced self-hypnosis course. Why don't you have to do anything now? But in terms of the influencing process, the biggest mistake I see people doing in influencing is to try and force others to be in their world, rather than joining the other person's world and finding out ways of helping them reconfigure it so it's, so their world fits the new context, the new things, the behaviors, feelings, and so on that they will need them to have. Does that make sense? Most people's idea of influencing is just be more like me and it'll be okay. Seriously, isn't that what you've done? When you try to give someone advice of something that is a problem in their life, and you go, what's wrong with you? This is not a problem. Just be more like me and you'll be fine. Right? But that's exactly the problem. They haven't had your lifetime experiences, attitudes, insights, conclusions, and so on, so they can't be like you unless you pre-vivify something for them like that, right? But actually, the simpler skill to pre-vivification is to hijack the revivification and attaching that to this new idea, which is kind of what you've been doing there. Does that make sense to you guys? Any other comments or questions on that? It's a very quick one. Can we have a mic up here?
I was
just going to share very quickly the level of time distortion that went on there, because that was no way 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That could have been like 2 or 3 hours in terms
Yeah.
of my experience of it. And I think you could probably quite happily with what you did, I think, with John on stage, the gentleman on stage. Basically, you could say to him, like, experience that, go back through those memories, and then within 10 or 20 seconds, they can come back to the room,
Yep.
and they could have gone through 10 years, for argument's sake, of recollection. So I
It's
just wanted
very,
to share
very
that.
possible. Absolutely. So you guys are getting some interesting deep trance phenomena spontaneously now, right? And the interesting part is, doesn't it feel natural? It's not like, oh my God, I've suddenly had a deep trance phenomena, yay. It's almost like, of course, it's just natural. Think about this. Look at what you've achieved in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. How many people are staying in the hotel here? Hands up. Just think about what you could achieve in an elevator ride. So I'll say no more on that point. All right, folks, you have a choice. The choice is I can either do a quick demo of what you just did. If you want to see something like that, that's fine. Or we can do one more exercise around this idea of revivification. I'll show you how to start turning that into a pre-vivification if you're interested in that. But we don't have time for both. Which would you rather have? All right, if you want the demo, stand up. All right, sit down. If you want to do a little bit of pre-vivification, stand up. Yeah, right, that's it. Split down the middle, why don't you? All right. Plan C. Plan C is we just work later. Do you want to work later? All right. John, would you come up for this thing? You've been this. Give him a round of applause. There you go.
I'm going to sleep tonight.
Yes, you are. Just because it saves a little bit of time, right?
Sure.
So let me just help you with this. Let me just help you with this a little bit. Put that there. Say a few words.
Hi, 1, 2.
Right, can you guys hear him okay? Try it again.
It's on.
Yeah. You hearing better now?
Cool.
All right, great. So, John.
Hi.
Hey, you will be.
Be narked, this is the expression.
Yeah, exactly. So last time we sat in this chair, we had a little chat, of course, about your scuba diving. And you're a scuba diver yourself, correct?
I have been in the past.
And you've enjoyed scuba diving throughout the
Immensely.
time? And I know you shared with me, like, you've been scuba diving to many different places, including, like, this place in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And typically what happens when you go scuba diving
Mm-hmm.
is you'll be sitting in the boat in your gear,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually the time comes when you get to roll over. You go into the water, the big blue is there.
Mm-hmm.
You get into the big blue, and then you sink for a little bit, and then you stabilize so that you can feel weightless,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You just feel weightless. And it kind of feels like you're floating in a womb or something like that, which is a charming, you're right. It's a charming thought, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
From time to time, you even have the pleasure of that sort of God beam that really brings things to life, which is great when you explore stuff. But the thing I really want you to know about, or you think about, is something that's actually very closely related to scuba diving, although it may not sound like it at first. It's this idea of a positive mental attitude. And you've heard of a positive mental attitude, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you say kind things to yourself, you expect good things, that you look at the bright side of life. Whenever something happens, people who've got a positive mental attitude, they find the more positive sides of things so that they can be happy about it and actually more optimistic and so on, right? What I don't know if you've realized yet is that scuba diving is very much like developing a positive mental attitude. Think of it this way. When you first learned to scuba dive, there was effort involved, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm.
It was pleasurable effort, but it was effort. And aren't you glad you made that effort?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you get to enjoy the big blue, the weightlessness, the womb, the God light, and all that stuff, right? The positive mental attitude is exactly the same thing. Once you have a positive mental attitude, your whole mind and everything you're feeling is like the big blue. Diving into a positive mental attitude is like rolling into the big blue. It's easy and it's effortless. And when you've really developed it, you will feel that light, weightless feeling, like you're in a womb. And that's happening all inside your mind. That's what it means to have a positive mental attitude. But the thing you need to realize is, just like scuba diving, it takes effort to develop this skill. It takes some effort. It's very worthwhile effort and it's enjoyable effort. But it takes some effort before you can get into the big blue, or a positive mental attitude, I mean. Because you see, life happens and stuff happens in your life. And some of that stuff is not necessarily always pleasant. And that's when you'll be tempted to let go of your positive mental attitude and get upset, frustrated, annoyed, and that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? It's happened. It's happened to you before. With a little bit of effort, you can correct your thinking. You can find those things in every experience that are worth finding. And it's important because it keeps you safe. Just like your equipment checks keep you safe before you roll backwards into the big blue. Now, a positive mental attitude is nothing like the Pollyanna syndrome, where you pretend everything's okay and it's not really. That is not at all what we're talking about. That would be like diving into the big blue with an empty tank. That would be a very silly idea. And you know what I mean by that, don't you? It requires adequate preparation and a full knowledge of those elements of the experience that are truly worth being positive about, the ones that you can do something about and something with. When you go scuba diving, you're aware of the potential risks, are you not? But you've trained to know how to resolve them. And so you get to enjoy the big blue, the weightlessness, the exploration, the God beams, in the safe knowledge that if something did go wrong, you know how to handle it. That's why a positive mental attitude is exactly like scuba diving. It takes effort to learn the skills of handling those more problematic parts of life. It does take effort. But once you've done that, and you've made the effort to do that, then you can enjoy the big blue of a positive mental attitude. Safe in the knowledge that if something does go wrong, you've prepared for it. You can deal with it. Your mind has all kinds of safety valves, just as your scuba equipment does. There's all kinds of warning signs, just like your safety equipment does, that tells you maybe now is a good time to exit the experience because something needs fixing. So it's absolutely appropriate and safe to have your positive mental attitude and enjoy that wonderful big blue experience that it brings, the weightlessness, because it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders, doesn't it? Because you're absolutely aware that your unconscious mind, that inner part of you, will act like your safety warnings, your dials, your diver's watch, and all the other equipment that tells you when it's time to take a break, so that everything happens as it should. You know what I mean, don't you? Now I have a suspicion, I don't know this for a fact, but I have a suspicion that you're developing a plan of action on how to best go about acquiring a positive mental attitude. It's kind of like going to the scuba school, learning how to put your gear on, learning how to use your gear. That first little dive that was exciting, but it seemed so much back then, but doesn't seem so much right now. And all those experiences prepared you to just be able to roll off the back of a boat, enter the big blue, the God beams, the weightlessness, the exploration, and all those wonderful things. I really look forward to finding out how you'll be using the positive mental attitude. I mean, I don't know about you, but isn't it an experience worth making the effort for? What do you reckon?
Yeah. Feeling pretty positive right now.
You really?
Yeah, absolutely.
What a surprise.
Why would I not?
Why wouldn't you, right? Do you have any questions for me or anything like that?
No, I'm good, actually. Yeah.
I bet you are.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Give a round of applause, folks. Thank you. So you can kill this mic now for a bit. You get the idea? So it may or may not have looked anything like what you did. It doesn't matter how I do it. What matters is how you do it, how you do your own version. Notice how, because this is a slightly different context in here, he was very happy to end up closing his eyes and actually have the full trance experience, right? Did you notice how before that happened, he found a halfway house, which is very typical in conversations. Did you notice that? Exactly. What was a halfway house? He stopped engaging in eye contact, which requires interaction. He stared off. Typically when people do this, we'll stare downwards. I'm not quite sure why, but we'll stare downwards at the floor at some angle. Some people will look up, but most people end up looking down, in my experience anyways. The direction, I think, is irrelevant, at least for my purposes. The point is, he's locking his gaze somewhere static, somewhere where nothing's happening. So you can look, if I'm looking at the carpet where nothing's really happening, I don't need to be stimulated by it. Does that make sense? This is, by the way, the beginnings of a negative hallucination. John, were you aware of the rest of the room at any point? So he's looking at one of the rivets on the stage up here, and you pretty much ignore the rest of the audience, right? So this is a way that his mind, and this is very typical, begins a negative hallucination. If you're looking at one point fixedly, you don't have to look at see anything else, which means you're technically having a negative hallucination by avoidance. Do you see how that works? It's the first stages of one. It's a very common thing in conversation hypnosis. They're not aware that they're doing it because they're in it. And typically that's where they'll stay in the context of a conversation. They won't necessarily close their eyes unless you give them a reasonable cause for it. And if your reason for it is not plausible enough, you'll just trigger the critical factor and they'll pop out of it and go, what do you mean? And then, of course, you start all over again. You get the idea? Do you guys have any questions about that little demo? No? Do you need to stand up and get the mic? Just get the mic over here. Just stand up and he'll find you more easily.
Hey, it's just that you went straight into positive mental attitude without any lead or anything. You just said, have you heard of positive mental attitude? And it's quite blunt, but it
depends on the context. In this case, the bluntness was interesting because I actually set it up in a sense of, look, last time we were here, we chatted about this, and I got the trance experience to it, right? Now, what does it mean when he's in trance? It means it's more forgiving of harsher breaks, right? He'll smooth them over naturally. Which means I can make a blunter break if I need to. So introducing the idea of a positive mental attitude was relatively easy. Now, the reason I mentioned all that as a less blunt reason, right? The reason I mentioned all that scuba diving stuff is because I'd like to talk to you about something else that is exactly the same thing, only may look a little different when you first hear about it. And you may have heard me say something along those lines as well, right? In fact, I think it's exactly how I introduced it. And then he says, what I want to talk to you about, of course, is the positive mental attitude. Now, I realize it may not sound like it has much to do with scuba diving. But here's the thing. And then, of course, we run off on to the next thing, right? So I've actually hijacked his possible exception ahead of time by saying it might not seem like it. It might seem like it, in which case I don't need to. But not knowing ahead of time, I just put in my language softeners, and that means I hijack a possible objection, which gives me long enough to build up a yes set, to which will give me long enough to then start linking the reification of the scuba diving back to the actual, positive mental attitude, and so they'll link up naturally. You notice how scuba diving, essentially, your revivification essentially becomes symbolic of whatever influencing process you're trying to give them. Does that make sense to you guys? So really, it's a dynamic mental imagery induction in a different form. You got the idea? Any other questions? All right, so let's do a final exercise with you guys. Oh, one over here. Just do you want to stand up quickly? Sure, please.
One thing I noticed which stood out very, very clearly in my mind, it was just the way that you not only, what you just did, explained, but you also hijacked and took in and injected specific things from scuba diving. So
Yep.
you, for example, said there are safety valves that
Yep.
will be introduced.
I just
There are-
extended the metaphor further.
Correct. So you brought in specific images
Yeah.
to reinforce the PMA component that you were trying to
And
build
the
around
reason
that.
for that, just in this context, is again, I'm doing something which we'll come on to tomorrow more. I'm out-framing a possible objection. The possible objection might be, yeah, but you know what? People with a PMA, they're just unrealistic. And it's dangerous to do that because you might get yourself in trouble. So I'm making sure I built in a little safety valve so that that doesn't happen. I'm out-framing a possible objection. Plus also, it's also a good precautionary measure that they realize that part of building a positive mental attitude must include some safety checks so they're not ignoring reality. They're actually getting the most benefit out of it, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Now, of course, if I was doing this in a context of some coaching practice, for example, or a longer interaction, I could teach him the steps for a positive mental attitude, always referring back to our symbolic or a metaphor of scuba diving for him. So now I've customized a whole learning process. Is this beginning to open some options to you guys? Anyone here have children? This means less in the UK than it does in the US, but it's still relatively prevalent here. Does the word mathematics strike horror into your children? But then again, do video games strike joy into your kids? Once you have revivified the idea of video games sufficiently, and you have sidelined their objections around mathematics sufficiently, can you see an instant resolution here? Now, I warn you, you have to do this a little bit of subtlety, because if they already hate maths, you have an extra bridge to cross, right? How might you do that in terms of the toolkit you already have? You can reframe it. That's not a toolkit we've dealt with yet. That'll be tomorrow. But it's essentially what we'll be doing. You hijack their dislike of mathematics. So in video games, blah, 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 chink. Now, I want to talk to you about something that you think you hate. And the only reason you are convinced that this is a terrible thing is because you don't understand the secret behind it. There's a secret to this thing you hate that once you understand it will mean you won't only love it, but you will be great at it when everyone else will suffer. Have I built up enough interest here? You get the idea? That's part of frame control, which we'll come on to tomorrow. But the idea is I'm still out-framing. I'm still having to sideline an objection I know will come, which is related to what we did with the safety valve and so on with the scuba diving metaphor. I just put them in there at that point in case it started sounding too much like all you have to do is go rah, 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 and it'll be great. I want to have some realism put in there too. You get the idea? So what I'll do now is I'd like to do one final exercise on the idea of pre-vivifying something, right? Oh, please, just go ahead. Just do you want a mic over here?
I think we've accidentally done something, that we've accidentally anchored positive mental attitude to bursting out laughing.
That's good.
We can't. I had to physically control myself from not laughing while you were working, because every time you said positive mental attitude, I want to laugh.
That's
and
a great,
it's
you know
here,
what?
and I can't
That's
control
a great
it.
combination to have. Why would you want to get rid of that?
Because it's kind of difficult when
Okay,
you burst out
think of it
laughing.
this way. Think of all the times in your life when you have had difficulties where you could have used a positive mental attitude more. Really think about them. Think about, I mean, you've had problems in your life, right? Where you would really have, it would have been really useful to have a positive mental attitude, right? Give me an example. Don't worry about the anchoring. That's superfluous at this point. Give me an example of one.
When I had cancer.
Say again?
When I had cancer.
That's a pretty big thing, right?
Yeah.
And it would have been very useful to have a positive mental attitude, right?
Yep.
Just think what just happened there. Notice what you're thinking about the cancer
Mm-hmm.
and the positive mental attitude you could have with that.
Yep.
Now, I notice you're not really laughing now, are you?
No.
Are there other things involved in that process how do you feel about the positive mental attitude now is the question I'm asking. There. Took a little while, didn't it? Now notice the inappropriateness you were talking about before has diminished, but it still is powerful, isn't it? Yeah. Because now you've attached it to something real and important. Now think about all the other aspects in your life, some of which really are worth laughing at, and some of which are worth taking seriously, but still with a seriously positive mental attitude, right?
Yep.
Isn't it good to know you have the choice?
Absolutely.
Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, it's a great resource. And seriously, whoever did that little job for you, that's a wonderful resource to have. Yeah? Because there's nothing accidental about it. If you happen to be laughing out loud whilst it's happening, you're creating a hypnotic trigger automatically, right? That's how simple it is. People, when I first learned these concepts, I tried oh, and now, here it is, ha ha ha, and nothing is happening, right? Because I was making it awkward. The more natural and conversational it is, the more natural it will occur for you, right? And you notice how quickly it was, right? And the only thing that was missing, by the way, was choice, which I think you have now, right? And by the way, the choice came from context, just so you know. All right, guys, let's do the pre-verification now. What I want you to do is work with the same partners just because it'll be the easiest way of doing this now. And you've already kind of revivified each other's experiences, right? There's the drumming, and I don't know, what was yours, Alan? Yours music, so it's a similar thing, right? What I'd like you to do is start off with a simple conversational little trance induction. I don't care what it is. In fact, it doesn't even have to be conversational. You get them to close their eyes if you want with this as well. It's just to make it easy for you guys, right? So in other words, I want to get them to the point where they're already receptive to ideas. You've had a number of yes sets, maybe some trance themes. I don't care how you do it, but spend no more than 30 seconds getting to that place, right? And then I want you to teach them a skill or something enjoyable. In other words, whatever your experience was, in this case it's drumming, in this case it was scuba diving, I'm not sure what it was in your case, right? I just like you to say, look, I want to share an experience I had with you that I think you might find of value. I really enjoy drumming. I really love scuba diving. Now, you may not know anything about scuba diving or about drumming, but I'd like to explain to you what it really is about scuba diving that's important, or about drumming that's important, or about swimming that's important, and so on. And essentially, you're just going to revivify your own experience whilst talking to them about it. You get the idea? It's very simple. Would you like to have a little twist you can put onto this that makes it really powerful, right? It's a very subtle twist, and you don't have to do it if you don't want to, if it gets too complex for you, but it's actually a very subtle twist, and it's very easy to do once you just let it happen. Initially, you talk about your own experience. For example, I love hypnotizing, and I love putting people in trance, especially when they go into trance so easily. You can see that happening here? Now, one of the secrets I found about hypnotizing someone else is I have to go first. Because when you're going first, something happens. You begin to feel differently as a person, as a hypnotist. Do you notice what I just did? I switched the referential index. I switched from the first person to the second person. Now, in the English language, it's a very natural thing to do, and in many languages, it's a very natural thing to do. I can't guarantee it for all languages, because I don't speak all languages yet. But the idea is, by switching referential index, by going from the I to the you, it still sounds like I'm talking about myself. But of course, you have an ability to give a very direct suggestion to them in the context of talking about your own experience. Do you get the idea here? Now, here's what not to expect from a pre-vivification of this type. That they'll suddenly get up and start drumming like crazy. Yay! No. What you're doing is setting the context, the unconscious context, for which they will be more predisposed to acquiring that skill more easily. Everyone think of something that you love doing that you were introduced to by someone else. Yes? Weren't you pre-vivified by them? Didn't they talk with such enthusiasm about it? You thought, I've got to give this a go. One of the ways I found out about this is when I was a kid, we had a surrogate grandmother. She was a friend of the family who'd look after us for longer periods when my father was going on business trips and so on. And she was, being a typical old age pensioner in England, she was a knitter. Right? So the classic stereotype of a grandmother, right? Now, there's absolutely nothing appealing to, in terms of knitting to how old was I at the time? 12-year-old boy, 14-year-old boy. Nothing. I loved knitting. Don't know why. The thing is, she enjoyed it so much that just talking about it and doing it, I just said, all right, I'll give it a go. And I got to enjoy it. I have no idea why. I have no reason for it. I had to make a reason. I had to make myself like a long lasso, because that's the only way I could think about knitting in a boyish sort of way. But the fact is, I just enjoyed putting the things together, and that's it. Do you get the idea? So it can be a very natural thing. I'm going to do it slightly artificially here because of the context, but it's a very natural thing. So with your partners, I'm going to give you 3 minutes apiece, 6 minutes in total, to talk to them about whatever they revivified in you because it's already active inside you. And I want you to do it in a way where you switch the referential index, and the idea of it is at the end of it, they should have some kind of an enthusiasm or interest in, or a sense of how easy it would be to engage in whatever hobby, task, or whatever it is you spend so much time revivifying. Does that make sense to you guys? Remember, begin with your H+ and putting them in trance for about 30 seconds or so before you touch on the topic. Off you go. So how was that for you guys? Was that interesting? Any comments or questions about that? No? Who enjoyed the brevification? Anyone? There's a very useful way, especially whenever you have any kind of teaching role, whether you're a salesperson, which by the way is teaching people how to buy a product, right? Whether you're an educator, which is different from being a teacher. Unfortunately, we have more teachers than educators at the moment. Whether in any kind of educational process, you should always begin with the love of the subject, because otherwise there's no motivation for it. And if that's your pre-frame, if that's how you prepare someone to introduce them to the topic, then everything inside of it becomes, let's put it this way, let's assume John here hated mathematics, or had the potential for disliking it. But what if he expected mathematics to, if I think of mathematics the same way as he does with the big blue, I talk about it in the same terms, so he gets inspired by this is amazing. What is this strange thing? Now he's willing to do the effort that's required to get through the process. You've prepared him for success ahead of time. You have formatted them for success ahead of time. And isn't that a much better way to start something? When they're prepared for success, when the unconscious mind expects success rather than failure. Isn't that an interesting idea? When you get really smart with this, you can revivify, hijack that, previvify your own thing, and just like the same way we did earlier today, your previvification links into their revivification. Do you see how smoothly that would happen? So my positive mental attitude and talking about it and revivifying it myself and linking it to his scuba diving experience suddenly creates it's a whole volcanic explosion of happiness, isn't it? Do you get the idea of how to apply leverage? We'll address that sort of idea a little bit more in due course. Do you have any questions about what we've covered so far today, guys? No? Then the last idea I'll leave you with is one that you really should contemplate with your eyes closed. Because each and every one of you has had some important experiences in here today, have you not? Now, if you go through the highlights of today, the things that you really enjoyed learning, I couldn't possibly know which ones they were. You spend a lot of time focusing on different aspects of the H+. Instant rapport, rhythms, and you really enjoyed at least some portions of that, whether you're the subject or the hypnotist. You learn to hijack negations, no's. And then you went into the idea of how to revivify experiences. You really learned to revivify experiences. And wasn't it a pleasure, a gift that someone gave to you, to revivify your own pleasant experiences? If you ever want to give someone a hypnotic gift and don't know what to give them, isn't this an instantly easy solution? To give them back a gift that they've already had, but didn't know they could appreciate as fully. The gift of revivification. Wasn't it a gift to you? And as you recall the experience revivified inside of you today, and all the highlights of that were of particular importance to you, I'd like for you to know that mastering hypnosis is as pleasant as experiencing a revivification in the way you did today. It is a natural process, provided you allow yourself to enjoy the hypnotic journey. Didn't you enjoy the experiences you talked about today? Wasn't it a pleasant way of doing things? When you're with a subject, a hypnotic subject, and you begin your hypnotic session, it can feel as pleasant as being revivified inside yourself, because all that you are doing, all you ever need to do to be a masterful conversational hypnotist is to revivify your own hypnosis room, your H+. And then that magic flows. The words are there, the movements are there, the techniques are there, the processes are there. And how can they not help but go into a trance with you when you already are there in such a pleasant way? You revivify your own hypnotic room by going first, so that you can then pre-vivify their own trance experience in whatever way you wish to help them do that. You can coach them on their trance signals. You can hijack their trance signals and suggest them. You can give them hypnotic thoughts or ideas. You can use your power words and trance themes, your language softeners, to give them choices as to the experiences they'll have. You can collect yes sets upon yes sets upon yes sets, and then piggyback your own suggestions and ideas on them. And you can revivify any experience you wish. Allow them to really enjoy a powerful trance experience. Isn't that a nice gift to give to someone? Every time I get to work with a hypnotic client, a subject, I think to myself, you're about to give someone a wonderful gift. A wonderful gift they really get to enjoy. How could you not be anything but enthusiastic in that trance induction, when all you're doing is giving them the gift of hypnosis? I know how good it feels, and you know how good that feels. And the subject gets to find out. And when you have as many choices as you do, one of them is bound to work. And it doesn't matter which one. You get to give the gift of trance and be a real force for good in other people's lives. Now, I don't know how you will feel going home, what you will do, how often and where you will revivify your own hypnotic room in order to allow yourself the freedom to hypnotically interact with those around you. But you know you can, and you know you will at the appropriate time. And all you really need to know is you don't need to feel like hypnotizing someone before you begin, because that's how you begin once you've made the choice. You just prepare yourself by revivifying your own hypnosis room. And isn't it nice in there? Don't you enjoy being there? And when you are there, why wouldn't they want to join you? If it's so pleasant for you, surely it can be equally pleasant for them. And that's one of the secrets for having enthusiastic, compliant, and wonderful hypnotic subjects. You go first. Which is really why now would be the time for you to go home. So you get to practice going first in an environment that is not this room. Doesn't that make sense? Because going first in here is easy now, which means going on out there, going first out there, well, you get to choose the time and the place, and when you do, all you have to do is recall being in here, and how could you not go into enough of a trance to do hypnosis? Isn't that something? Because you're in a hypnosis room right now. So, I'm wondering how many of you will be curious enough about what will happen to you when you go home or wherever else you'll be hanging out today, and merely thinking about this room, whether that's going to be enough for you to activate your own hypnosis room, and then you can just talk to people and find out what happens. Isn't that a strange idea, an interesting idea to contemplate? So with that thought, you might as well open your eyes and be alert enough to make your own way home wherever you're going to today, whether it's in the hotel room or you're driving or whatever else it is. You need to safely reach your destination before you get to rethink about this room, won't you? So I'd like to thank all of you for your extra time and attention today. And I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.